The morning sun rose slowly above the tall pines of the northern forest. The air was cold but clean, filled with the smell of wet soil and pine needles. Two hikers, twin brothers named Aaron and Leon, walked along a narrow trail that wound through the mountains. They carried large backpacks, old hiking sticks, and a small tent rolled at the top of their bags. Aaron was the older twin by a few minutes, but he always acted like the leader. His face was calm, his eyes sharp, and his movement steady. Leon, on the other hand, was more curious and often stopped to look at every strange tree, flower, or rock they passed. Their boots crunched on the gravel path as birds sang high above them. They had been walking for 2 days far from any town. The twins had planned this hiking trip for months. Both loved the wild and wanted to find a quiet place where they could spend a few days away from noise, phones, and people. Their map showed a large green area where almost no one went. It was said that during an old war, soldiers had built cabins there, but most had been forgotten with time. As the day grew warmer, Aaron looked back at his brother. "We should reach the lake by sunset," he said. Leon smiled and nodded. "And maybe find something interesting before that," he added, lifting his camera. He liked taking pictures of strange old things. The trail went deeper into the forest. Trees grew taller and closer, blocking the sky. The path became rocky, and every step made their legs ache. They crossed a small stream, then climbed over fallen logs. After a few hours, the forest became silent. Even the birds stopped singing. The air turned cooler again. Leon looked around uneasily. "It feels different here," he said. Aaron checked the compass and the map. "We're still on the right track. The lake should be close." They kept walking until they reached an open clearing. The sunlight touched their faces and they saw the reflection of water not far ahead. The lake was wide and still, surrounded by dark trees. Its surface looked like glass. The twins dropped their bags and drank some water. "It's beautiful," Leon whispered, taking pictures. "Yes, but we need a place to sleep before it gets dark," Aaron replied. He looked around for flat ground to set up their tent. Then he noticed something unusual near the trees on the other side of the lake. "It looked like a roof, do you see that?" Aaron pointed. Leon narrowed his eyes. "It looks like a cabin." They packed up again and began walking around the lake. The ground was muddy and they had to step carefully to avoid slipping. When they finally reached the other side, they saw it clearly. It was a small wooden cabin, half hidden by bushes and vines. Its walls were old and covered in green moss, but the shape was strong. The door was closed and one window had a broken frame. "Wow," Leon said. "It must be one of the old soldier cabins the map mentioned." Aaron touched the wall. The wood was rough but not rotten. "It's still solid. Maybe we can stay here tonight." They pushed the door slowly and it creaked open. Inside, the cabin smelled of dust and old smoke. Sunlight came through the cracks in the roof, falling on a wooden table and 2 chairs. A fireplace stood at the far end, black from old fires. There was also a small bed frame without a mattress and a rusty lantern hanging near the door. Leon walked in and looked around with wide eyes. "It feels like time stopped here." Aaron nodded. "Someone built this with care. Maybe a soldier once lived here alone." On the table, they found a tin cup, an empty bottle, and an old metal box. Aaron opened it carefully. Inside were small items, a broken compass, a few coins, and a folded piece of paper. He opened the paper and tried to read the faded writing. "It's too old," he said. "The ink is gone." Leon took a picture of it anyway. "We can try to clean it later. Maybe it says who lived here." As the sun began to set, the twins decided to stay in the cabin for the night. They cleaned the floor, set up their sleeping bags, and collected dry branches from outside. Aaron started a small fire in the fireplace, and soon the room filled with warm light and the sound of crackling wood. Leon sat near the fire, looking at the flames. "I like this place. It feels peaceful," Aaron smiled. "Yes, it does. It's quiet, safe, and hidden. Maybe this can be our small sanctuary for a while." Leon repeated his brother's words softly, as if trying to remember them. "Our sanctuary." They ate their simple dinner of bread and canned beans, then sat silently for a while. Outside, the forest was dark. The sound of crickets filled the air. The twins felt calm for the first time in days. After cleaning up, Leon checked the corners of the cabin with his flashlight. He found some old boots and a torn jacket under the bed frame. "Look, these are still here." Aaron examined them. The soldier must have left in a hurry. They placed the items back carefully. Then Aaron closed the door and locked it from inside using a wooden bar. The fire was still burning low when they lay down in their sleeping bags. The night was cold, but inside the cabin it felt warm and safe. The walls groaned softly as the wind blew outside. Leon listened to it with half-closed eyes. "I think this place likes us," he said quietly. Aaron laughed a little. "It's just the wind. Go to sleep." As the firelight danced across the walls, both twins slowly drifted into sleep, but the forest outside stayed awake. An owl called in the distance, and the trees whispered in the dark wind. In the middle of the night, Leon opened his eyes. He thought he had heard something. A soft sound like footsteps outside the cabin. He held his breath and listened carefully. The sound came again, closer to the door. He sat up slowly, his heart beating fast. "Aaron," he whispered. His brother did not wake. The fire had turned to weak orange embers. Leon reached for his flashlight and pointed it toward the door. The sound stopped. For a moment, everything was silent. Then something brushed lightly against the window. Leon froze. He stared at the window for a few seconds, waiting. But nothing else happened. He took a deep breath and tried to calm himself. "It's just a branch," he told himself. He lay back down, keeping his flashlight close. Outside, the wind blew again, carrying the sound of rustling leaves. Soon his eyes grew heavy and he fell asleep again beside his brother. The cabin stood quiet under the pale moonlight. The forest around it looked calm, but a faint mark appeared on the ground near the window. It was a single footprint pressed deep into the wet soil, facing the door of the cabin. The morning came quietly. Sunlight slipped through the cracks of the cabin walls and touched Aaron's face. He woke slowly, blinking against the light, and stretched his tired arms. The smell of old smoke still hung in the air. Leon was already awake, sitting near the fireplace and staring at the ashes. Aaron rubbed his eyes. "You are up early," he said. Leon nodded. "I could not sleep well. I thought I heard something outside last night." Aaron looked at him with curiosity. "Probably the wind or an animal. This place is deep in the forest. We are not alone here." Leon smiled weakly, but his eyes stayed serious. Maybe still it felt strange. Like someone was walking near the cabin. Aaron stood and stretched again. "Let's not start the day with fear. The cabin is strong and safe. We will stay here a few more days, rest, and explore around." They cooked breakfast using a small stove they carried. The smell of coffee and bread filled the room, making it feel more alive. After eating, they packed small bags with snacks, water, and their camera. Aaron wanted to explore the area to see if there were more old cabins nearby. When they stepped outside, the forest looked brighter. Birds sang and a light mist rose from the ground. The air was cold but fresh. They followed a narrow path that went deeper into the woods behind the cabin. The trail was uneven and filled with roots and stones. As they walked, Leon kept glancing back at the cabin. Its wooden roof looked peaceful under the sunlight, but something about it made him uneasy. He could not forget the soft sound he heard last night. They continued walking until they reached a small hill. From the top, they could see the lake below, shining like silver. The forest stretched endlessly around it. Far away, smoke rose from somewhere between the trees. Aaron pointed toward it. "Do you see that? Maybe another cabin." Leon lifted his camera and took a picture. "Or maybe someone else is camping." "Either way, we should check it later," Aaron said. "But first, let's see if we can find anything near here." They spent the next few hours exploring. They found broken wooden fences, old bullet shells, and a rusted sign half buried in the dirt. The words on the sign were hard to read, but they could still make out a few letters that looked like a soldier's name. "This must have been a base long ago," Aaron said. "The soldiers built cabins like ours for resting." Leon nodded and took pictures. He felt both amazed and nervous. The forest was beautiful, but it also carried a quiet sadness. Everything old seemed frozen in time, waiting for someone to remember it. When they returned to the cabin near evening, the air had grown colder. Clouds covered the sun, and the forest turned dark faster than before. They gathered more dry branches and started another fire inside. Aaron checked the door and windows to make sure they were secure. "If it rains tonight, we will be fine," he said. Leon nodded. He sat near the fire, looking again at the folded paper they had found in the metal box. The ink was still faint, but now in the firelight a few words seemed clearer. "Aaron, come here," he said. "I think I can read some of it." Aaron leaned closer. Leon pointed at the faded writing. "Look, it says something like Patrol Route 5. Do not return until..." And then the rest is gone. Maybe it was a soldier's note. Aaron thought for a moment. That means whoever lived here might have been sent on a mission and never came back. The idea made Leon shiver a little. Then this place really was his home. They sat silently for a while. The fire crackled softly, filling the silence. Outside, the wind began to move through the trees, making low sounds. Leon leaned back and looked at the ceiling. "I like it here," he said. "Even with the strange feeling, it feels like a secret place." "Away from everything," Aaron smiled. "That is why we came. To find a place that feels free. Maybe this is what we needed." Night came slowly. Rain began to fall outside, tapping gently on the roof. The sound was calming. Aaron added more wood to the fire and then checked their bags. "We have enough food for 2 more days," he said. "If the weather stays fine, we can leave after that." Leon nodded but stayed quiet. His mind was far away. He kept thinking about the strange sound from last night and the single footprint he had seen outside in the morning, though he had not told Aaron about it. It was small but clear, and it was not his or his brother's. As the rain grew heavier, thunder rolled far in the distance. The wind blew against the walls and the cabin creaked softly. The twins sat near the fire and played a small card game to pass the time. Suddenly, a soft thud came from outside. Both of them stopped moving. Aaron looked toward the door. "What was that?" "Maybe a branch fell," Leon said quickly, but his voice was low. They waited a few seconds, listening. Another sound followed, slower and closer. It was the sound of something stepping on wet ground. Aaron stood and grabbed his flashlight. "Stay here," he whispered. He opened the door slightly and shone the light outside. The rain fell in thin sheets and the wind carried mist across the clearing. The beam of light moved over the wet grass, the trees, and the lake beyond. Nothing moved. Aaron closed the door again. "Nothing there," he said, sitting down. "The forest plays tricks at night." Leon tried to smile but failed. The sound had felt too real. They both decided to sleep early. The firelight dimmed as they crawled into their sleeping bags. The rain kept falling steady and soft. Hours passed. The twins slept deeply, tired from the long day. Then in the middle of the night, something faintly tapped the window again. A small handprint appeared on the glass, pressed against it from outside. It stayed there for a moment, then faded as if wiped away. Inside, Leon turned slightly in his sleep, unaware of it. By dawn, the rain stopped. Mist covered the lake, and the forest was silent once more. Aaron woke first and went outside to breathe the cool morning air. The ground was muddy from the rain, and water dripped from the trees. He walked around the cabin, checking the area. When he reached the back wall, he stopped. There were footprints again. Not just one this time, but several, leading from the edge of the trees to the window and then disappearing toward the lake. The prints were smaller than his and Leon's, almost like a child's. Aaron frowned and bent to look closer. The marks were fresh. He felt a cold feeling in his chest. He went back inside and found Leon packing their bags. "We should leave today," Aaron said quietly. Leon looked surprised. "Why?" "We plan to stay another day." Aaron hesitated, then said, "I think someone was here last night. There are footprints outside." "Small ones," Leon froze, his eyes wide. "Like the ones I saw yesterday." Aaron looked at him sharply. "You saw them too?" Leon nodded slowly. "I thought it was nothing." They stood in silence for a long moment, listening to the quiet forest around them. Finally, Aaron said, "Let's eat something and think. Maybe it's better to find where these tracks lead before deciding to leave." Leon agreed, though his hands shook slightly. The cabin, once a peaceful sanctuary, now felt different. The air inside seemed heavier, as if something unseen was sharing the space with them. They did not speak again as they prepared for the day. The forest outside waited, still and cold. Whatever had walked near their cabin during the night had left its mark, and the twins knew their adventure was no longer just about hiking. It had become something else. The morning light was weak and pale, spreading slowly across the wet trees. Mist covered the forest floor, curling around the roots like smoke. Aaron stood outside the cabin, staring at the small footprints near the window. The marks were clear, pressed deep into the mud. They led toward the lake, then disappeared at the edge of the water. Leon joined him, carrying 2 mugs of warm tea. "They look fresh," he said softly. Aaron nodded. "Yes, whoever made them was here not long ago. Maybe during the rain." Leon looked around nervously. "But how could anyone move here at night in that storm? We didn't hear the door open." Aaron knelt and touched the ground near the prints. The mud was cold and wet. "I don't know," he said. "But the size of these prints is strange. too small for an adult. They both stood silently, watching the mist drift over the lake. A faint ripple spread across the still water, as if something had moved beneath the surface. Leon shivered. "I think we should leave," he said again. "This place doesn't feel right anymore." Aaron looked back at the cabin. Smoke still rose from the chimney, and the sound of birds had returned to the forest. "We came here to rest," he said. "If someone lives nearby, we will find out. Maybe these are just old tracks from before the rain." Leon sighed. "Maybe." After breakfast, they decided to follow the footprints toward the lake. Aaron carried the flashlight and compass while Leon held the camera. The air was cold, and their breath came out in small white clouds. They walked along the lake shore, careful not to slip on the wet stones. The footprints soon disappeared into the shallow water. Aaron looked around the edge, searching for any sign of movement. On the far side of the lake, something caught his eye. It was a wooden post, half broken, sticking out from the ground. "Let's check that," he said. They walked around until they reached it. The post had a metal plate nailed to it. The plate was covered in rust, but the twins could still read a few letters. It said, "Camp 9, Patrol Sector B." Leon looked at it with surprise. So the cabin really was part of a soldier camp. Aaron brushed off the dirt. "Yes, but if this was Camp 9, there should be more buildings nearby." They searched the area carefully. After a few minutes, Leon found something unusual. Near the base of a tree, hidden under moss and leaves, there was another wooden box, smaller than the one they had found in the cabin. "Aaron, look here," he called. Aaron came closer and knelt beside him. Together they lifted the box. It was heavy and the lock was broken. Inside they found papers, a metal badge, and a small notebook wrapped in a piece of cloth. The notebook's cover was worn, but the pages inside were dry. Leon opened it slowly. The first page had a name written in neat handwriting. "Captain R. Morton," Leon read aloud. "This must be the soldier who lived here." Aaron nodded. "Let's take it back to the cabin. We can read it near the fire." They returned quickly, eager to know more. Inside, Aaron cleaned the table and placed the notebook on it. Leon opened it carefully and began to read. The writing was clear, though the ink had faded in places. The first few pages described daily life during the war. The soldier wrote about guarding the lake, building cabins, and waiting for orders. But then the tone changed. The words became shorter, filled with worry. "Listen to this," Leon said. He writes, "We hear voices at night near the trees. The scouts say the lake moves on its own. I saw footprints outside my cabin again. I checked, but there was no one." Aaron frowned. "Voices at night? That sounds exactly like what we heard." Leon turned the page. "Here's more. The men are afraid. They say something watches us from the forest. I told them it's only the wind, but even I am not sure anymore." They read quietly for a long time. The later pages were written in shaky handwriting. The last entry said, "If anyone finds this, stay away from the water. It is not what it seems." Leon closed the book slowly. The fire popped in the fireplace, breaking the silence. "Do you think he meant something living in the lake?" he asked. Aaron stared at the notebook. "Maybe. Or maybe he was just tired and afraid." Leon looked through the window. The mist had lifted a little, and the lake was calm again. Still, it feels strange that he disappeared. "No one came back here for years." Aaron leaned back. "We should be careful. But I want to see what else is out there. The map shows one more path behind the hill. If we follow it, maybe we'll find more cabins." Leon sighed. "All right. But if we hear anything strange again, we leave." Aaron smiled faintly. Agreed. They packed light and left again. The trail behind the hill was narrow and overgrown. The trees blocked most of the sunlight, and the air felt colder. The sound of the forest was distant. Only the crunch of their boots broke the silence. After an hour of walking, they found another small clearing. At its center stood a half-broken structure smaller than their cabin. The roof had collapsed, and the walls were covered with vines. Aaron stepped inside carefully while Leon stayed near the doorway. Inside, the air smelled of earth and decay. On one wall, Aaron found faded writing scratched into the wood. It looked like a name and a date. "Morton, 1943, he read softly. Leon entered, holding his flashlight. "That's the same name from the notebook." Aaron turned to him. "This must be where he stayed before he built the other cabin." As they looked around, Leon noticed a symbol carved above the doorframe. It was a circle with a cross inside. He took a picture. "Do you think this was a soldier mark?" Aaron studied it. "Maybe, or maybe something else." Suddenly, a faint sound came from outside. It was a splash followed by another, like someone walking in shallow water. Both froze. "Did you hear that?" Leon whispered. Aaron nodded. "Stay quiet." They stepped out slowly, scanning the area. The sound stopped. The trees stood still and the air was heavy. Then from the direction of the lake came a faint whistle. It was long and soft, almost human. Leon's face turned pale. "That's not the wind." Aaron's grip tightened on the flashlight. "Back to the cabin. Now." They began moving quickly, keeping close together. The sound followed them, sometimes near, sometimes far. The forest seemed darker than before. When they finally reached their cabin, both were out of breath. Aaron closed the door and secured the wooden bar. The fire was still burning from before, filling the room with light. Leon dropped his backpack and sat on the floor, his hands shaking. "What was that?" he said. It sounded like someone calling. Aaron stood near the window, looking outside. "It was coming from the lake," he said quietly. The whistle came again, faint and distant, carried by the evening wind. The twins stared at each other, unsure what to think. Aaron finally said, "Whatever it is, it doesn't want us to leave." Leon looked at the notebook on the table. The words on the last page came back to his mind. "Stay away from the water," he repeated softly. The fire flickered and a gust of wind blew through the cracks in the wall. The light dimmed for a second before returning. Outside near the lake, ripples began to spread across the surface again, slow and wide. Something was moving under the water, waiting for night to come. The next morning, the forest was quiet and still. Sunlight filtered through the trees and the lake reflected the sky like a mirror. Aaron woke first as usual and checked the area around the cabin. The ground was damp from last night's rain, but the footprints had disappeared. He could not see any sign of movement outside, yet the strange feeling from before stayed with him. Leon joined him with a small cup of warm tea. "Are you thinking about last night?" he asked. Aaron nodded. "Yes. Something is near the lake, but we do not know what. We need to be careful today." Leon sipped his tea and looked toward the water. "I want to see the lake closer. Maybe we can understand what is happening." Aaron hesitated. "All right, but we stay together and keep the cabin in sight. Do not wander too far." They packed light for the day, taking only water, snacks, the notebook, and their camera. Stepping out, they moved slowly toward the lakeshore. The mist from the morning had lifted, revealing the calm water and green trees around it. The forest seemed peaceful, yet the lake called their attention. As they reached the water's edge, Aaron noticed small ripples moving across the surface. They were not caused by wind as the trees were still. Leon leaned closer, curiosity shining in his eyes. "It looks like something is under the water," he said softly. Aaron nodded. "Could be a fish or a log moving. But watch carefully." They followed the shoreline, stepping over stones and roots until they reached the edge of the clearing near the broken wooden post. Here the water was shallow and they could see the bottom. Aaron pointed at a strange mark in the sand beneath the water. "Look," he said. "It is like a trail." Something moved along the bottom. Leon knelt and photographed it. "Do you think it is alive?" Aaron studied the ripples carefully. "I do not know. We have never seen anything like this before. Let's mark this place and watch." The twins found a fallen tree near the edge and sat quietly, keeping their eyes on the water. Hours passed. Birds flew over the lake and the sun climbed higher in the sky. The trail in the water seemed to move slowly, sometimes disappearing, then reappearing in another spot. Leon whispered, "It is as if the lake has a secret." Aaron nodded. "And we might be the first to see it in many years." After a while, they returned to the cabin for lunch. Aaron made sandwiches while Leon read more from Captain Morton's notebook. The pages revealed more about the soldiers' fear of the lake and the forest. He wrote about strange reflections, voices at night, and footprints that appeared and vanished. "Aaron," Leon said, pointing at a page. He wrote that sometimes he would see shadows under the water, moving like they were alive. He thought it was magic or some power of the forest. Aaron frowned. Magic or not, he trusted it enough to warn others. We should take his word seriously. The twins decided to rest for the afternoon. Leon took some photos of the cabin and surrounding forest. Aaron repaired a small leak in the roof that had formed from the recent rain. The quiet afternoon allowed them to feel safer. But both kept thinking about the footprints, the whispers, and the movement in the lake. Evening came and the sky turned orange and pink. The forest shadows grew long, Aaron decided to make another small fire in the fireplace. The warm glow filled the cabin and made it feel welcoming again. Leon took the notebook and read a passage aloud. He wrote, "If anyone follows the lake, they must not go alone. Something watches, something waits. Trust the forest, but not everything in it." Aaron listened carefully. "We need to follow his advice. Stay together and be careful." The night fell. Outside, the wind carried a soft whistle across the lake. Leon froze, remembering the sound from before. Aaron put a hand on his shoulder. "Stay calm. We are together." Suddenly, a faint light appeared across the water. It was soft, moving slowly near the far shore. Leon whispered, "What is that?" Aaron grabbed his flashlight and shone it toward the light. The glow seemed to vanish for a moment, then appear again behind the trees. It was not a fire nor a lantern. Something unusual was happening, but neither twin could understand it. Leon looked at Aaron. "Do you think it is someone? Or something else?" Aaron shook his head. "I do not know, but we need to watch carefully. Keep the cabin in sight." They waited tense and silent. The light moved slowly along the water's edge. After a while, it disappeared behind the trees, leaving only the reflection of the moon on the calm lake. The twins decided not to follow it. Instead, they sat near the fire, discussing their next plan. "We should explore the forest tomorrow," Aaron said. "Maybe we can find where the light comes from or what is moving in the lake." Leon nodded, though he felt nervous. "Yes, but we must stay careful. The forest has secrets and the lake has secrets too." They finished their dinner quietly and the fire burned low. Outside, the night was still. No wind, no animals, only the sound of water softly lapping against the shore. Later, as they prepared to sleep, Leon looked once more at the lake through the window. He thought he saw a shadow near the edge. It did not move like a fish, but like something watching. He shivered and turned to Aaron. "I think the lake is alive," he said softly. Aaron nodded. "We will find out carefully. For now, we stay here and rest." They lay down, the warmth of the fire comforting them. The cabin felt safe, but the forest outside seemed to breathe quietly, full of unseen eyes and hidden paths. During the night, the twins heard faint sounds again. Footsteps near the cabin, soft splashes in the water, and the gentle whistle of wind through the trees. They stayed awake, listening, but did not move. By morning, the lake was calm and the forest looked peaceful. The strange light from the previous evening was gone. Yet the feeling remained that something waited, hidden near the water's edge. Aaron and Leon prepared for another day of exploration. They packed their small bags and decided to follow a narrow trail into the forest behind the cabin. The path was almost invisible, covered in moss and roots. "This trail must lead somewhere," Aaron said. "The soldier might have used it to patrol or hide things." Leon nodded. "Let's find out." As they moved deeper into the forest, the air grew cooler and the trees denser. Strange shapes appeared among the shadows, but none were alive. The twins felt a mixture of excitement and fear. They were close to uncovering the secrets that had been hidden for years, yet the forest warned them to be careful. The trail led them to a small clearing with a shallow pond. Here the water was clearer than the lake and the bottom was visible. Small ripples moved across the surface, though the air was still. Aaron knelt and touched the water with his hand. "It feels cold but calm," he said. Leon examined the edges and noticed strange symbols etched into the stone surrounding the pond. "These are like the ones in the cabin," he said. "The soldier might have made them." Aaron looked closely. "Or someone before him. Either way, it is part of the forest story." They studied the pond, the symbols, and the surrounding trees. The forest seemed quieter here, as if listening to them. The twins realized that the lake, the cabin, and this small pond were connected. The soldier's warnings were true. Something unusual existed in this forest, and it had watched them since they arrived. They stayed in the clearing until the sun began to lower in the sky. Then reluctantly, they returned to the cabin. The forest was darker now, and shadows stretched long across the trail. When they reached the cabin, the fire was still warm. They sat quietly, reflecting on what they had seen. The forest held mysteries, the lake hid secrets, and the soldier's cabin had become more than a shelter. It was a window into a past filled with courage, fear, and unknown wonders. The twins realized that their sanctuary was not just a cabin. It was the forest, the lake, and the stories left behind. And now it had chosen them as its visitors. The morning sun rose slowly over the forest, casting long shadows across the cabin and the lake. Aaron and Leon woke early. filled with a mixture of excitement and nervousness. They had decided to follow the hidden trail deeper into the woods, hoping to uncover the secret of the lake and the strange lights they had seen. After a simple breakfast, they packed light. The notebook of Captain Morton was carefully wrapped and placed in Aaron's bag. They carried only water, some bread, and their camera. Stepping outside, the forest felt alive with the sound of birds and the rustle of leaves in the gentle morning breeze. "The forest feels calmer today," Leon whispered. Aaron nodded. "Yes, but we must stay alert. Something watches this place." They followed the trail behind the cabin, where trees grew closer together and sunlight barely reached the ground. Moss and roots covered the path, making every step careful and deliberate. The trail led them to the clearing near the small pond they had discovered the day before. The pond was still and clear, but the symbols etched into the stones seemed brighter under the morning light. Aaron knelt beside the water and traced one of the carvings with his finger. Leon took photographs, fascinated by the pattern. "I wonder what these symbols mean," Leon said. Aaron thought for a moment. Maybe they are a warning, or a guide. The soldier might have left them for someone to understand later. Suddenly, a soft ripple moved across the pond. The twins froze. The water began to swirl slowly, forming small waves in a circular pattern. Then from the center of the pond a faint glow appeared. It was gentle, blue, and seemed alive. "Do you see that?" Leon whispered. Aaron nodded. "Yes, stay calm." The glow grew stronger and a shape began to rise from the water. It was not like any animal they had ever seen. It was tall and slender, almost human in shape, but transparent, as if made of water itself. The twins held their breath, too amazed to speak. The figure raised what looked like a hand and pointed toward the cabin. Leon's eyes widened. "It wants us to go back?" Aaron shook his head slowly. "Not exactly. I think it wants us to understand something." The glowing figure moved closer to the edge of the pond. Ripples spread across the surface and the reflections of the twins appeared distorted, shimmering with the glow. Leon felt a strange calm wash over him, though his heart still beat quickly. The figure spoke, but not in words. A soft voice filled their minds, clear and gentle. "The lake protects the forest. The cabin was built to watch and listen." The soldier understood, but he could not stay. "You are the first visitors to be trusted in many years." Aaron and Leon exchanged a look, amazed. They had never heard a voice like this, yet they understood every word. "Do not fear," the voice continued. "Respect the forest, and the lake will show its secrets. Learn, but do not disturb." The figure slowly sank back into the water, and the glow faded. The pond returned to its calm, clear state, but the twins could still feel the presence of something extraordinary. "We have to tell someone," Leon said quietly. Aaron shook his head. "No, not yet. This is private. The forest chose us to see this. We must respect it." They stayed at the pond for a while longer, observing the water and the reflections of the trees. Then carefully they returned to the cabin. The fire from the previous night had burned out, but the warmth of the morning sunlight filled the room. Leon opened the notebook again. "Captain Morton must have seen the same thing," he said. "The glowing figure, the messages. It explains why he warned others to stay away." Aaron nodded. "Yes, he knew the forest and lake had powers we cannot understand. He stayed hidden to protect it. Now it has trusted us to see it too." The twins spent the rest of the day exploring the area around the cabin, careful not to disturb anything. They collected dry wood for the fireplace, took photographs of the forest, and mapped the trails they had followed. The sense of calm in the forest was stronger than ever, as if the trees themselves were watching and approving of their presence. That night, they lit a fire in the cabin and ate a simple dinner. Outside, the forest was dark but not frightening. The wind whispered softly, carrying the faint scent of pine and wet soil. The lake reflected the moon, calm and clear. Leon looked through the window. "Do you think we will see the glowing figure again?" he asked. Aaron smiled. "Maybe, but only if the forest wants us to. We do not control it. We only watch and learn." They sat near the fire, talking quietly about the discoveries of the past few days. The soldier's notebook, the footprints, and the glowing figure all connected into a story that stretched back decades. The twins realized they were part of something bigger, a secret preserved by the forest and the lake. Later, they crawled into their sleeping bags. The cabin felt safe and warm more than ever before. Outside, the night was quiet, and the forest seemed to breathe gently. The lake shimmered under the moonlight, peaceful and full of hidden life. In the middle of the night, Leon woke and looked toward the lake. A soft glow appeared on the water, faint but unmistakable. He nudged Aaron gently. "Look," he whispered. Aaron opened his eyes and saw it too. The glowing figure moved slowly across the pond, almost like it was watching over them. They did not speak. They only watched, understanding that the forest and lake had chosen them as guardians even for a short time. By morning, the glow had disappeared, leaving the pond calm and still. The twins prepared for their journey back home, but they felt changed. The cabin, the lake, and the forest had become more than a destination. It was a place of trust, of secrets, and of wonder. Before leaving, they cleaned the cabin carefully, making sure it was as they had found it. They placed the notebook back in the wooden box and closed the door. The cabin stood silently behind them, hidden in the forest, waiting for the next visitor who could respect its secrets. As they walked along the trail, the twins looked back at the cabin one last time. The sun shone on the roof and the trees swayed gently. Leon smiled. "This will always be our sanctuary," he said. Aaron nodded. "Yes, a place we will never forget." The twins continued down the trail, feeling the calm of the forest in their hearts. They had discovered a hidden world, one full of mysteries, courage, and wonder. The forest and lake had shared their secrets with the twins, and the twins had learned to respect and protect them. From that day on, Aaron and Leon carried the memory of the cabin, the lake, and the glowing figure with them. They knew that some places were more than they seemed, and some secrets were meant to be cherished quietly. And deep in the forest, the lake reflected the sunlight, calm, clear, and full of the mysteries it had chosen to share.